So here we are, we three queens. I'm Achieng.
I'm Musonda.
I'm Micheline.
And today we're talking about harassment.
Ooh.
Yeah. Some serious conversation today. Some of you might be wondering, okay, harassment, it's kind of such a big word because it's a big thing. And there's many different definitions of it. Here's one I'm just going to read out just to kind of facilitate the conversation. It's defined as any repeated or continuing uninvited contact that serves no useful purpose beyond creating alarm, annoyance, or emotional distress. And they give some examples like, in the workplace, it can be derogatory jokes, racial slurs, personal insults, expressions of disgust or intolerance towards an individual or a particular race, mocking someone's accent. There's so many ways that harassment translates or expresses itself.
I'm glad that you at least have a frame from which we can sort of talk about these things, because even when it got to the end, some of these things that people just accept, like mocking of accents, right? The idea of really feeling, excluded or just being, cast to the side in the workplace because of such. And it might seem minor, but actually it's not on.
It's huge.
Not on. It's traumatic. It can be extremely distressing. You know?
Yeah.
And that, mental health is such a real conversation that we have. And a lot of things that relate to harassment lead to issues of mental health on the part of the people that are actually dealing with it or facing it.
Absolutely.
Or subjected
and
to
I
it.
think also the absence of empathy, when people are unempathetic and then they do something that they think, oh my God, this is okay. And talking about cultural context, I remember one situation where a colleague of mine, a Dutch colleague of mine many years ago, made some really silly jokes, and he just thought those jokes were okay. Like, he said something that was supposedly satirical, and I thought, to me, it was problematic because it was talking about, a joke about, I think, blackface. There's a Dutch story.
Yes, the whole blackface thing.
That's been in the media recently.
Thing and whatever. And I thought, that is very racial and problematic. And he didn't see a problem with that. And I said, no, dig into the history. And it made me so uncomfortable. It's like, oh, you're just getting very uncomfortable about the situation. And he went on and on about it. So I just had to withdraw from that space. And I said, I will not tolerate this if he doesn't understand the context of my discomfort. And so you find these,
Yeah, it's interesting because that Dutch, gollywog-like feature, has actually been in the news again, but very recently, and I don't know where it's landed. I remember this from when I first heard of this in the maybe 90s or something. A girlfriend told me about it. But there are some black people then who thought it was nothing, who just also didn't dig into the history or somehow probably actually decided that they weren't going to go against the grain and complain about it. But it's not on because it's truly out of the mocking of black people that's out of a place of feeling superior.
Right. Absolutely. It's interesting because a Dutch person had the audacity to tell me it's fine. The blackface was because it was the helpers, the elves, coming through the chimney. And I said, well, if they were just regular folk coming through the chimney and the black, and the black is from the soot from the chimney, then why do they have curly hair?
It's ridiculous.
It is a mockery and it is racist. It doesn't matter how they want to excuse it or explain it off. It is wrong.
But talking about the whole sort of harassment situation, for me, what's been incredible over the last year, maybe couple of years, is just the power of social media and what that did for campaigns like the Me Too campaign. I mean, guys. Wow, for both men and women, I suppose. Women coming forward, and I remember #MeToo. And I've been reading this book entitled New Power, talking about how the power of social media changed dynamics and conversations around harassment.
Absolutely. And you know what? It points to it. Actually, social media, what it's done is it's brought many people together.
Exactly.
And therefore, in the past, in pre-social media, if you were harassed, it was your torment on your own.
Quiet, don't say anything.
Whereas now social media almost gives you a channel through which
agency
you can
even
get the word out there to many more people.
Absolutely.
You know?
And you know what? And this thing of feeling that, you know, like you're on your own or you don't have an outlet must be really just difficult to swallow. I haven't a harassment example I'll share, but I haven't, fortunately, you know, I've never felt that you can harass me and I just have to sit and swallow it. But I was speaking to a friend recently, and unfortunately she's late. And she was working in Nairobi in consulting, so I imagine in her mid-20s, So I was just speaking to her recently when she was about mid-40s. And she said to me, you know, Mish, she said, I don't know, we were all analysts or whatever that first level in consulting is. And she's like, I don't know, things just happen. And it's like, we all knew it was happening. She's like, even me, some of the things, I don't even want to go there. And I looked at her. You know, I just looked at her really shocked because I had this, I don't know, it just struck me that maybe I really don't know the half of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this was like in Nairobi, she was probably, you know, upper middle class. She's like, oh no, there were just certain things that happened. And you could see that she wasn't ready 2 decades on, you know, to talk about it. And she was almost looking at me like, you mean you don't have a story kind of thing? And that, you know, to this day, if she was still alive, I really plan to keep, you know, just trying to crack, to dig deeper and learn more. But that really got me wondering just how many hundreds, thousands of cases of this exist in the workplace. And, you know, unfortunately, and you mentioned men do get harassed too.
Absolutely.
But my fundamental belief is that because it's a power thing, and because already women are powerless for the most by and large, right, in the workplace, or power, you know, what can we call it? Power inferior.
Right.
You know, the cases we're talking about really are about men on women. And I just get the sense that there's a lot more out there than we know about, and because people aren't sharing.
But it makes me wonder. I mean, you know, organizations have policies. You know, what's going wrong with that? And there's also the law. Even in organizations that may not necessarily have a policy, I can't understand why there are no laws to protect you.
I think sometimes the laws are there, but I also feel that it's their enforcement.
Yes.
And also the systems and mechanisms in place. You know, for instance, if a company does not have an ombudsman, for example, or somebody that you can go and talk to that you trust, what are the mechanisms or space? I mean, just look at what the pandemic has done. The levels of violence, the levels of harassment and all of that have escalated. What mechanisms are in place and who provides that information of where you should go to, be it you a youth, a woman, man, where do you, who do you reach out, which call, which number do you call with a level of comfort that these people are not going to judge you, or
you lose your job. Some people are like, look, I can call because there are policies, say there's a written HR policy, or you go to your, I don't know, let's say your manager and you say this and this happened. At the end of the day, I just go back to power, because if the person who's harassing is some, decision maker or something, you can go the legal route, the HR route and stuff, and in the meantime lose your job. And I think people are making those calculations and thinking,
they would rather be quiet.
It's just shush.
Most, you were just saying that, there are obviously laws, maybe they're just not enforced. In organizations, there's probably policies that aren't or may not necessarily always be enforced. But I think for any woman or even man who's out there in an organization or in a setting where they're being harassed, sometimes you just need to find someone. Sometimes it's just someone to talk to. That's so true.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because it feels so alone, I can imagine, being in that situation.
Absolutely. And somebody might be able to even understand, you want to keep it confidential or, whatever you want, but help you get to the next level. Or at minimum, just the fact that you've now shared this really sort of painful burden, this feeling of hopelessness. But do you have like a personal example at all of?
I was so lucky. I think I was so lucky. But I do know of cases where people have been harassed. I remember way back, an organization I worked with, it's not even in my resume because it was such a long time ago, where the most senior person would pinch girls' bottoms and smack their bottoms. And we were very few people in the organization. And when I found out that that's what the others were going through.
Wow.
And then they asked me, aren't you going through it? And I said, no.
What a freak, a little thrill of pinching and slapping people's bums at work.
In fact, if I even start describing the person, even you can just
I
wonder.
can't. It's always those that I don't even know. I can't.
Okay.
Don't even.
We're not gonna go there. We're not gonna go there.
We're not going there.
But you know what? Again, power. Because recently I was so shocked that it was almost happening to me. Almost like, excuse me. So I was doing this consultancy, and I was consulting for a consulting firm. So let's call that firm X, and then the client is Y. Yeah. Right? So Y happened to be at the work site for a couple of days, right? So not the firm that was hiring me, that was paying my bills, but Y is, again, literally the end client, right? So we go for lunch, and of course this is all fine because it's good to know that ultimate client, And then I was to go off and do my consultancy, right? And he happened to be in the country. This was, we were doing this in a West African country, and he happened to be to have his own different meetings. So during lunch, I think I said something like, "Oh yeah, I'm just going to quickly charge my phone, and then the car is coming to get me, and I'm going to the ministry where I was going to do this consultancy." And he's like, "Oh great, okay." He's like, "So why don't you charge the phone in my room upstairs?" Right, so we were having lunch at his hotel. I was at a different hotel.
And he wants you to charge the phone in his room.
So I said no, and I literally was like, "No, garçon." And I called the waiter. I'm like,
no, which phone was he asking you to charge?
Girlfriend.
Exactly? I mean,
but you know how you're so surprised.
Double meaning,
Let me tell you, at first I was so shocked. I was like, "Oh no, I'm good, garçon. Please help me plug my phone," because I had the phone, I had the charger. Just plug it here. There are plugs everywhere. So we finish again, and he's like, "This was really great." We exchanged again just the terms of reference of my consultancy, and then I'm like, "So I'll see. I might see you at the end of your trip if you're still here. But it was really good to meet you, sir. And then he's like, no, come on up and charge your phone. Just come up. Like, he literally was like, no. And I said, no, I won't be doing that.
Harassment comes in many forms. Sometimes it's sexual, sometimes it can be through derogatory remarks, or even a look. I mean, I've gone through the one where somebody, every time I'd speak, they'd sneer and make a sound.
You're joking.
It was racial. That one was racial. I was the only black person, and it was happening consistently, and it got progressively worse. There were policies in place, but not enforced.
Covering, interesting.
Fortunately, I've worked long enough to know that you can actually take some steps to address that, because when you work with organizations that have those policies in place, there are ways that you can circumvent the individuals who are not protecting you and go to what, like you said, the ombudsman or a more senior level where it can be addressed.
And that's the beauty of being able to tell somebody, because if you don't know that, perhaps that person might. Or if you're lucky enough to have a mentor, somebody who's been in the workplace for years longer than you have. Just to kind of guide you in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Gosh, you're lucky.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's all we have time for now.
I know,
lady.
it's such a time.
Yeah, this is a big subject.
It's a big one, and it's nice that we took a bit of a, sort of crack at it. So thank you for opening that subject here.
Thank you for watching. It's great to have you here. We so appreciate your support.
Merci.
Do subscribe. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Merci.